Hello, I'm Blaze, and welcome back to Warframe, as well as yet another long-awaited new weapon that has been teased for some time. Rapiers finally entered the arsenal with a Destreza on point. The Destreza's blueprint is available from the market for 25,000 credits, and the crafting in the foundry afterwards will need a further 20,000 credits, 10,000 alloy plates, 1,700 plastids, 5 nitane extract, and 2 argon crystals, along with a mastery rank requirement of 7. I was kind of expecting this to have a mastery rank requirement of 8 like the other powerful melee weapons, but not so. It does use the old argon crystal standby though. Also nitane extract, which people tend to complain about for some reason. Alternatively, if you want to make with the deep penetrating stabs right now, you can also get it pre-built from the market with its own weapon slot and a pre-installed catalyst for 175 platinum. Or you can also grab its finesse bundle to also get its new Vulpine mask stance without having to farm it, plus a 7-day affinity booster for a total of 220 platinum. Statistically speaking, the Destreza makes a very respectable first impression. It has a physical damage of 75.1, matching the weak older Sidon oddly enough, with a spread of 63.8 puncture damage, a smaller 9.4 slash damage, and a minuscule 1.9 impact damage. Going along with its high base damage, it has an attack rate multiplier of 1.0, setting the standard for any future rapier type weapons, as well as a fairly respectable 20% critical hit chance, and a 2 times critical damage multiplier, so it definitely benefits from a berserker crit build. Finally, its status chance weighs in with 5%, which is basically nothing, but it does come along with its own quirk which makes a bit of a difference in terms of status procs, which I'll bring up later. As for mod polarities, its stance slot comes with a dash polarity to match Vulpine mask, and it also comes along with a mod slot polarized with a V. The Destreza is another reminder that the weapon's attack rate is indeed an animation speed multiplier rather than an absolute value. 1.0 on one weapon class is different from a 1.0 on another weapon class, and that can clearly be seen with how exceptionally fast the Destreza is in general. You tend to hear me complain a lot about being locked into attack animations with melee, and this is not one of the times you'll be hearing it. The Destreza's speed makes it extremely responsive, and of course, as with most melee weapons, the stance is what really makes or breaks the weapon for 2 reasons. 1, a stance mod increases the weapon's mod capacity, which is important, and the moveset the stance gives also dictates how the weapon may best be used and just generally determines everything about how it will be used. Vulpine Mask nicely blends a number of thrusting motions along with some wider cutting swings. Cuts aren't really all that useful on a rapier compared with its thrust, but it does afford the ability to strike multiple targets more easily, so I'm willing to excuse it as a concession that must be made for the sake of gameplay. Its first added combo, Dual Secrets, is pretty convenient to pull off, with a pattern of 2 parry 5. This is a fairly useful go-to combo for most situations, thanks to its ease of use, and it also comes along with some nice damage multipliers on its last 3 strikes. The last strikes also happen to include 2 vertical cuts, which is pretty damn convenient for taking out nearby flying units. The second added combo, Assailant Guise, is also the one you can probably just forget about, especially once Berserker procs result in wild flurries of strikes that make its 1 pause 5 combo difficult to pull off. Its final hit is a fairly stylish spinning upwards cut, though showing your back to your opponent is generally a terrible idea, that strikes a wide area, but otherwise it's mostly a set of thrusts. Finally, the third and final added combo is Hidden Flourish. This one basically makes the whole stance. It's a 1 hold 5 combo which can easily be started by just holding down the attack button on the first strike, and incorporates a number of extremely stylish cuts with multiple hits into the combo, as well as giving a final lunging strike. By the way, that last lunging strike, all enemies struck by it are briefly stunned and become open to finisher attacks during the stun. Legitimate finisher attacks. The ones that bypass armor. It's amazing, and it lets you completely shred through high-level enemies. And the finisher animation itself is very satisfying. It's perhaps somewhat brutal, but that's warfare in general. Your Tenno will yank back their arm, and then run them through from inside their collarbone down through their entire body. It's quite the finishing blow. The Destreza still has more tricks to it though, incredibly. Primarily, a number of its hits, including the very first strikes for every combo, force a slash status effect which causes targets to bleed and take damage over time that also bypasses armor. This gives the weapon damage a healthy tail to it, which lets you do additional damage during everything else. Another smaller trick is the Destreza slam attacks. This isn't unique to the Destreza exactly, but its slam attacks will actually ragdoll enemies. The effect radius seems to be approximately 5 meters, but being a ragdoll is formidable regardless, as the enemies need to first land before they can start getting back up. Slide attacks and aerial attacks borrow from the standard sword moves with their slashes. This does make them easier to use, as you'll likely be familiar with them already, and does come along with benefiting from the Destreza's relatively long reach. There is one problem with the moveset, however, and that comes down to its charge attacks. To the Destreza's credit, the charge attacks are actually extremely fast and can be chained together quite nicely if you're good with the timing on the button inputs. However, you may remember that I mentioned with Hidden Flourish that it can simply be started by holding the melee button down on the first strike. Charge attacks are also activated by holding down the melee button, and Hidden Flourish's combo takes priority. So, to actually get a charge attack to work, you'll need to spam through the first 2 attacks and then perform the press and hold to get it to work, which is a colossal pain in the ass. This isn't enough to sour my opinion on the Destreza as a whole, but it does highlight that perhaps there should be a separate button for melee attacks and charge attacks. We have a secondary fire function now, so perhaps that could be used to perform the melee charge attack with the weapon held. It would certainly get around the problem of conflicting inputs with one being forced to take priority. But in any case, modding the Destreza has a surprising amount of choice to it, considering that there are a few different things it does quite well that you can focus on when making a build. Mine goes something like this. Spoiled Strike, while I have started liking it less, is actually perfect on this thing because of how damn fast it is even after Spoiled Strike's attack speed penalty. I also like adding Primed Reach on pretty much everything now, and the Destreza definitely benefits a lot from it thanks to being quite long by default. Primed Reach will make it easier to land all those thrusting strikes. From there, Life Strike goes on as usual, and I actually have Berserker with Organ Shatter leaving out True Steel. I find that combined with the Destreza being so fast by default, and the fact that True Steel's bonus is only 60%, that it honestly does just fine with its base 20% critical hit chance to activate Berserker. This leaves 2 mod slots for elements, which you just slot in depending on what you're fighting. There are of course some changes you can make to fit your own style. You can remove Primed Reach if you're comfortable with its default hitbox, and use the slot for something else. And you can either add True Steel for some more critical hit chance, or even replace Organ Shatter for True Steel if you value the number of critical hits for Berserker over the actual damage dealt from critical hits. Auger Strike, though limited availability, is also worth considering due to the Destreza being mostly puncture damage. This is great against armored targets but will be weaker against shielding, so keep that in mind when facing Corpus or the Void. I will also specifically mention Finishing Touch here. The last strike on Hidden Flourish allowing you to perform finishers might tempt you to use this mod, and after some testing I did notice a reasonably solid damage increase by using Finishing Touch compared to Auger Strike. 29,332 on a finisher with Auger Strike, and 34,400 on a finisher using Finishing Touch, against a level 100 heavy gunner. But this will come with the cost of sacrificing another mod, and you may instead value general damage or something for your utility rather than modding around the finisher attacks, but it is an option. The Destreza is fucking gorgeous. I really like complex hilted swords in general, so I'm quite happy with the Destreza even for that. Its Vulpine Mask stance incorporating slashes also enables the weapon class to include side swords in the future as well, which, while not a reality just yet, would make me even happier, because side swords are actually my favourite kind of sword. Yes, I have a favourite kind of sword. And of course, the absolute most important thing. The Destreza is worn on the Warframe's hip like a sensible fucking sword. Finally, the Nikanas have another weapon that they can welcome to the club, and you don't have to have the bare blade magnetized to your back like a fucking tool. That said, the Destreza does still leave its blade bare. This is kind of unfortunate because I do recall the concept for the Destreza including a scabbard. If they do add that as a cosmetic option in the future, I'll buy it instantly. I really would like a scabbard for the Destreza. That is literally the only thing that is missing from it to basically make it the perfect melee weapon for me. Well, perfect might be an exaggeration, but the Destreza is absolutely a great melee weapon. It has a good moveset, it does solid damage, and it comes along with its own quirks that set it apart from other melee weapons in some way, so that it's actually a legitimate alternative option. And at least for me, its combination of power, style, and not being attached to your fucking back while you're not using it, places the Destreza as my new favourite melee weapon of choice, finally knocking the Dragon Nikana from that perch. Thank you for watching my look at the Destreza. All comments are appreciated, and I hope to see you around next time. For other Warframe stuff, you can click down below to check out my new favourite Warframe with Natja, or check out my opinions on the other recent side-on. And as always, good luck, have fun, and take care.